Hi, in this video we're going to look at how to find the length of an array in JavaScript. So finding the length of an array means to count how many elements there are in an array, or how many items belong to an array. So what we'll do in this video is we'll look at a couple of examples. We'll create an array and then we'll use a method to find out how many elements are in that array. And the same method actually works for finding out how many characters there are in a string. Alright, so this can be really useful in programming. For example, if you were creating a game and in that game you had the player could have an inventory of items that they collect during the game that they can use. You might have you need to create a list that keeps track of which items they have in their inventory and add items to the inventory or remove items from their inventory. And an array would be quite useful for that. And being able to find out how many items are in that array would also be useful. Same if you were creating, let's say, something like a online shopping app, and you needed to find out how many products a user had in their cart. Then an array or a similar structure would be useful for storing or keeping track of all of the products that are in their shopping cart, and being able to find out how many items are in their cart would also be useful. Okay, so let's have a look at an example. What I'm going to do is just create a new array, and for this example we'll just create an array of different types of cars. So we'll have, so let's say BMW, Volkswagen, maybe Toyota, and maybe Audi. Alright, so we've got an array of cars here, a list of different cars, which are each stored as string values. All right, and there's 4 items in this array, but if we were going to use this as an array in a program somehow, and we needed to find out how many items were, or how many elements were in this array, and even after elements had been added or removed, we can use a method called the length method to find out how many items there are. So we could either just log this straight to the console or display it on the screen, or we might store it in a variable. We might call this variable something like number of cars, and we would just refer to the array, which is called cars, and then say dot length. Okay, so this variable called number of cars is now going to store the length of this array, so the number of elements in this array, as a number, as an integer value. So there's 4 elements in this array, so number of cars should be equal to 4. To test that out, we can just log that to the console. All right, we can open up the page. We can just refresh it, and then we see 4 in the console. Just remember, to get the console, if you're using a browser like Chrome, you can right-click on the page, click Inspect, and then click on the console. You can also find it from the menu up here. You can click on More Tools or Developer Tools, and then click on the console. So it displays 4, so that's the count of how many elements are in the array, which is called the length of the array. Now, this same method works for strings, and we actually looked at this in a previous tutorial. And it can be quite useful finding the length of a string. For example, if maybe you're creating an app and users need to sign up for an account before they can use the app, they might need to set a username and password. So you could use the length method to maybe check the length of their username if you have a limit on how long their username can be, number of characters. And you might have a minimum length requirement for the password. For security methods, you might say password needs to be at least 10 characters long. So it needs to contain at least like 10 letters, numbers, or characters, other symbols. All right, so using the length method would be quite useful for checking, is the password long enough? Is the username not too long? That kind of thing. So let's just test this out. We'll create a variable called password, and just imagine this is a password that's been collected from the user. Just say oranges. All right, and then same way that we found out the length of the array, we can find out the length of this string. We can even store it in a variable if we wanted to. So we could call this password length equals password dot length. Oh, just like that. Okay. Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters in this string. So if we log this to the console, we should see the number 7 in the console when we refresh the page. And there we go. We see 7. We can also find out the length of an element in an array. So we know how now to find out the length of the array itself, how many elements in the array, but we can also find out the length of each element. So if it's a string value, like these are, that is text, we can find out how many characters are in one of these values. All right, so using methods that we've looked at before to access individual elements in an array, and now using a length method to find out the length of strings or arrays, we can achieve that. So for example, if we wanted to find out the second string or second word that's in this array, we want to find out how many characters it contains, so how many letters or numbers or whatever's stored in those quotes. We can use the length method, but on that specific element using its index. So remember, indexing starts from 0. BMW is element 0. Volkswagen is element 1. Toyota is element 2. And Audi is element 3. All right, we start counting from 0. So what I could do is I might just console log this. All right, we can refer to the array, which is called cars. Then in square brackets, we refer to the index of the element we want to grab. So if it was Volkswagen, that's in index position 1. So in square brackets, we say 1. And then we can say dot length. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 characters in that string. So when we log this to the console, we see the number 10 there. Okay, so that's basically how to find the length or the number of elements in an array, but also using the same method, we can do that with finding the number of characters in a string. Thanks for watching.